So welcome all. This is actually our third session of Reorienting Taste, the series of recordings that we're going to be doing. The first two sessions were with two doctors, one Ayurvedic doctor, one a traditional Chinese medicine doctor. This is part of, like a five-part series. And then we are going to bring together the insights from questions of healing and questions of food, how they two converge. And I think this is going to be a very important session for us because this is in many ways the missing link when we talk about food and health and medicine. Someone has to be producing that food, not the cooks who process the food, but the ones who are producing it. So it's very delightful to have with us Madhu Reddy, who is a well-known organic farmer, specializes in permaculture. Chao Tse-Chung, who's been an organic farmer as long as has been a researcher and person intervening in the intellectual life in Hong Kong. So we have an attempt here to bring together insights into two very different places, but two places that might be similar in terms of their history and in terms of maybe even current practices. I began the first session, I'm the moderator, Tejaswini, began the first session by saying that I have just come from curating an album of musical practice between India and China. And that album is called Resemblance. It's called that for a reason because we were looking for similarities in differences, recognizing the differences, but also acknowledging the similarities. I think this conversation about organic farming is likely to go in the same direction. At least I hope it will. And that's the wish for this meeting. So let's begin. I know that Edible Archives, Anumitra and Shalini have a ton of questions to ask you, some of which have been indicated already. So over to you, Anumitra and Shalini.
This is Anumitra. I will first just, before we start the questions, I just want to say that I'm really grateful that both of you came for the session. You agreed because both of you are very busy with your farming and other like teaching activities, and but it is very interesting also for us and privilege for us to get both of you in the same conversation, because I have visited Chow's farm when we went to Hong Kong, and I know the practices of that Madhu does, and I have been taking ingredients from her farm for a long time. And also I know that organic farming, because we also do little bit of farming, we know that it's not easy. It's not a path that it's also not a path that can be easy, that you decide on something and you go on. It's just the practice is very, very difficult. So we'll start with the questions, and mostly Shalini will be asking the questions, and if I have any question in the middle, I'll just ask. So Shalini?
Yeah. Hi, this is Shalini. I'll go through the questions and also help to maybe make some connections between the things that both of you say. I want to echo on Mitra and saying I'm so glad that we could bring everybody together to do this. The first thing I think is just also for all of us to get to know each other a little bit properly, to talk a little bit about what led each of you towards organic farming. What were the ideas? What were the inspirations for it? And if you have any personal anecdotes, etc., about how it came about, and what especially what made you move in this direction as opposed to other kinds of farming or other things altogether, that would be very good. Shall we start with Chow?
Yeah, sure. Thank you for having me in this discussion. And the reason why I started farming is because of social movement in Hong Kong. It was like 11 or 12 years ago. the government back then was planning to build an high-speed rail from Hong Kong connecting to the Guangzhou city. And at that time, the construction of the rail involved the demolition of a village. And at that time, I was participating in the protection of that village. And then that was a moment when it was actually the first time that I saw a farming village in Hong Kong, actually. Because my upbringing was totally in the city. And I don't even go hiking, for example. And but at that time I went to that village, and then I got to see that it was really a very wonderful and powerful thing to me to be able to have a little piece of land next to their houses, and then they can spend some of their time working in the farm, and then some of their time working something else. And then by having this combination, they can secure some of their food, and then they can develop a lots of ability or capacity for working on the like many things in their everyday life. And I was just so amazed to be able to see this. And then that was the one of the reasons why I started farming. But then, of course, in the course of this maybe 12 years, and I learned something else, and I actually was very, very, very into the practice or the knowledge or scientific knowledge or the philosophy, etc., etc., of the farming practices in our culture, and also from, say, for example, I was also very interested in the idea of permaculture. So yeah, to keep it short for the time being, I would say this is my beginning.
So just to give you guys a bit of a background, I come from a family which has roots in farming, but not directly. So my grandfather was the last practicing farmer in the family, but the land remained in the family. So as he was getting older, so my mom and dad kind of took some interest while keeping their jobs. So it was kind of trying to keep a connection to the land. And I grew up spending pretty much all my summers in both grandparents' villages, though I was a city child. And my connection to specifically the word organic and understanding that came while I was living in the US, where my one of my running coach, she gave me a book to read. And this was in the early 2000s, where people were getting conscious about the processed foods and what we are putting in our body and what are we eating and how it affects us. And it was during that process, and a consciousness about the environment was there, but that connection between, the word organic, I think it came around that time where I was saying, what am I eating and how am I eating what I'm eating? So how much of it is coming wrapped in plastic? So it kind of started from there. And when I moved to India, it was, how do I then become part of the solutions? That I was thinking all big things: climate change, environmental action, soil fertility, but from a very theoretical standpoint, and from a very even though don't have any academic background in this, it was coming from that side. It was coming from uh, how do you actually think about all this? And suddenly there was this light bulb moment for me when I heard a conversation about soil fertility and its connection to carbon sequestration. And I was like, okay, so I can take that land which my parents are now kind of working on, not working on, and perhaps I can do something. And that's when I kind of went back and said, can I do something on it? And this was again without any background, and having the courage that I'll learn on the way. So that's how I started with organic farming. And it was just, by that time, I knew that it can't be a monoculture, it has to be something diverse. And I wanted to have a fruit orchard, and I started with that. And I didn't have too much information. I said, I'll learn on the way. So that's my journey. And this started, I would say, the theory part, thinking part started in the 2000s, but on the ground, the first tree that I planted was 2013. So
So I think that one of the things that is clear a little bit is that for both of you, uh, um, environmental concerns in a larger sense were some of the major motivating factors towards organic farming. And I'm wondering, which towards our next question also, how do you feel in terms of either the advantages or the limitations of specifically organic farming? How do you feel these work in relation to things like health, healing, biodiversity, environment, pollution? Because a lot of farming is happening in other ways also, in both, as in not so much in Hong Kong necessarily, but definitely on the mainland in China and all across India. So where do you feel organic farming specifically fits in terms of the advantages and limitations it has?
I think the advantage is precisely the challenge, because in organic farming, at least in our practices, we don't really use any pesticide, not even organic pesticides, and we try to buy as least fertilizers as possible. We instead we mix we make compost, not a lot, but we make compost, and we try to fetch materials from our surrounding environment to fertilize our plant, like the soybean residue from our nearby tofu factory, things like that. And what I want to say is that I think if we compare our practices with conventional farmer, we have a very few weapons in our pocket. If we met some pests, we don't just get some bottle from our pocket and then just spray on the plant. And I think that was a challenge. And but I also think that it was exactly where the advantages lies, because we have to observe very, very hard. We have to interact with our plant very, very hard. We have to keep very close eyes on the plant since the seedling moment until all the way to the transplantation phase, and then to their growing phase, and then flowering phase, and so on and so forth. We have to look at the plant and then see if they are growing well, and to see if they are happy. And then if they are not happy, we have to immediately think about what is going on. Is it the weather? Is it the pest? Or is it the irrigation? Or is it the the different kinds of plant that we grow next to it, etc., etc. And I think by observing very hardly the plant growth, we actually learn a lot about the biology, physiology, the ecological relationship between the plant and also the soil or anything under the soil and things like that. And in this very complicated and sometimes very frustrating process of learning, and we actually learn a lot and equip ourselves whenever we plant. It's like we don't borrow or get a menu from the bookstore or from the internet, and then we just follow the step and then we will get the harvest. But then we have to observe and interact very hard with what we are planting. I think this is what I enjoy most, but I have to repeat once again, sometimes for many times it is a very frustrating things to have every day.
Yeah. If I could speak from a larger sense, I think the support for organic farming is not there. From a academic level to on the ground, the policies are not there. So yes, there are people doing it and there is information out there, but it's not my neighbor doing it. So the learning curve that I personally had to go through was a lot. It was a lot of reading, a lot of application, a lot of falling flat on my face with mistakes that I made. So there was no guiding, how do you say, partner or, somebody guiding us through this. So somewhere I feel that was a big challenge for me. I didn't have maybe my great grandmother or my great grandfather did it, because by the time my grandfather's generation came, the green revolution had already started. Perhaps in his earlier days, his earlier self could have taught me that. But so everybody around is doing conventional farming. There's a lot to learn from them because the ethic of just working on the land is so hard. So there's a lot to learn from the farmers around. But what do you use instead of synthetic? How do you actually go about doing it? A lot of it was book knowledge, then you transfer it onto the land. So some mistakes were made in that. And I feel that's the part that I'm also playing, where I've become part of this new generation which is doing it. So there are people who want to learn from me later on with my mistakes. So I always tell people who come to my farm, you learn more from my mistakes than my success stories, because that then teaches you what to do and what not to do. But the plus point of a lot of this is you become a part of this niche group. So you sort of form a community of your own. They are not geographically close to you, but in spirit, in your thinking ways. So there's a formation of a tribe happening slowly, where people think alike, and you kind of even have similar ideologies and stuff like that. So that I would say would be the big advantage. But the limitations are what I said. The support system is not there. Market access is very hard. So when I'm transporting something, it's pretty much all my cost. I'm not going to the local markets here because I won't get a fair price for what I'm sharing. So that I would say is a big part of some of the challenges that many of us face here in India. And the solution, of course, is this is not a single person's journey. So unless it becomes a community endeavor and 10 other people around you are doing it, it's still a single individual's journey. Needs to become a community endeavor in the end to make an impact out there.
If I may just intervene here, I think that it was obviously uppermost in your minds, Madhu and Chow, to speak about the challenges. But obviously what keeps you going is also the kind of advantages
Yeah, yeah.
you get from engaging in organic farming. And I
Absolutely.
wondered if you could speak especially to the larger project that we have on board, which is to do with health and healing.
Yeah.
So I think that, maybe you haven't articulated it, but maybe you could yourself say, since your journey has not been that long, it's been about 10 to
Yeah.
20 years for both of you.
Yeah.
Do you notice any change in your own attitude, not just towards the plants, but towards the human body, towards the farmers themselves, the kind of food that you eat? Is there any,
Absolutely.
so is that
Yeah.
what also keeps you going? The question of how this will not only contribute to your health, but to the health of the planet itself.
Oh, absolutely. Part of the reason why I started doing this is for the kids in the family. So when I started, my nephews were about a year and a half old, and I felt that that they are the ones who are gonna need some of this good food for sure, because we had some access. My parents definitely had access, but as I was noticing, um, there was not a consciousness in the family around this. So it started with me saying, okay, let me just produce the food and you guys will see the change. And the conversation that started in the family was actually with flavor first. It was like, oh, those tomatoes remind me, that tomato chutney reminded me of how my mother used to make and all. So it's the memories that started coming in. And I remember my father and mother put a monoculture mango orchard, even though he loves different fruits. So I asked them, why didn't you put a color, Java plum, which is a beautiful fruit? Why not custard apples? So somewhere that whole conversation on what memories that were attached to a small berry that is no longer available, I went and found in the nursery and planted it for him. Maybe more to bribe him so that I can keep doing my work, and him not interfering in it. So it started with flavor, then it started with processed foods. We started actually incorporating a lot more millets in our diet. We said, can we grow? I come from a very dry land area in India, which never even had rice as a big part of our diet. We never really had wheat. If we made wheat in a home, it was like for some wedding or some, a ceremony or something. We would make puris, which is a puffed bread. So that conversation that I was having with myself, I was trying to translate into the family, and that kept me going, bringing things from the farm and saying, oh, these are bananas from the farm, this is guavas from the farm. And it's the taste that was acknowledged more. The fact that it was grown without any pesticides, without any fertilizers, was a bit of a secondary thing, but that was fine with me, as long as it was like, oh, the taste is fantastic. I have not eaten a mango like this in a long time. And that also translated with consumers, people that I was selling mangoes to. The fact that kids came and said, I remember this one kid who said, I'm allergic to mangoes, I can't have mangoes. And for me, that was very strange. I was like, that's not possible. And I encouraged the mother and the father to have mangoes from my farm, because we were doing all natural ripening, whereas in the market it's an artificial agent, and that causes a lot of stomach upsets in kids and older people. So this kid actually then comes back again and says, oh, I'm not allergic to the mango anymore. So that kept me going, even though it's a very hard journey. And I completely agree. Some days I kind of wonder, why am I doing this? But it's those affirmations from people who kind of say, thank you for bringing that flavor back into my life. I remember a mango from that tree in the banks of that river. Things like that, where people started sharing their own journeys. Then you kind of feel, oh, this is great. And you kind of evoke food as memories for me. Every morsel sometimes you had in the summer holidays evoked something. So bringing that back for other people brings a joy to my thing. Yeah.
I think for me, I actually became a vegetarian after I started growing vegetables. But the reason is pretty weird because like I think that was maybe 7 or 8 years ago when at the time actually I still the thing is still the same now. We work every day from dusk till dawn in the farm, and then we were quite we're busy, and then because the location of the farm is not very close to the town or those some of the major market town. We have to like travel more than half an hour to get to the market to buy food, and then when our farm began to produce enough food, then I began to just rely on what I can produce in the farm. And then I think, well, it's okay. And then I don't really feel less energetic than before. And then probably my digestion is better than before. And and when people, or actually my mother, or my family, they were saying to me, well, you have to eat some meat, you're not getting nutrients, blah blah blah. And then but then I what I am experiencing is now I'm tasting like because in Hong Kong, I think most of the people, when they talk about vegetables, they talk about maybe I don't know, 5 types of vegetables, 10 types of vegetables, but all through the years in our farm, I think we actually, or at least we grow maybe 60s or 70 different varieties. So when people saying that I'm not getting enough nutrients, I said that I'm getting like 10 times variety that you are eating in terms of vegetables. So I think this is very, I don't know, amazing to me, because a lot of species that we grow now, I actually didn't know the name, or I didn't even see them before I started farming. So I think my world in terms of food is like utterly enlarged instead of like shrink to only vegetables. And I think this is one thing. The other thing is body. My wife and I have a little girl, and then she is like 4 years old now, and then before Jenny gave birth to our daughter, and then we are thinking about we are having all those pictures of how she is going to grow up, and then one of the things is that we are pretty sure that she will have is that she will have a lots of time spent in the farm, and then touching everything, and then get dirty, and then nasty, and then muddy, and then things like that. And I think this is, and of course, we also read books about like microorganisms and bodies, and the relationship between them, etc. And then I can say that I'm pretty happy to see that she can grow up in an environment where the existence of different kinds of microorganism is not controlled or like sterilized by something that we don't know or we are not able to control. And I think the result is pretty, I think it's satisfactory. It's like she didn't really get sick so often. Even when she begins her kindergarten life, and she mingle with her fellow schoolmates, and then doing all those ridiculous things. And then we don't really bring her to the doctor very often. I think maybe like less than 5 times for all her life. And I think there's something going on between uh, in her growth, but because I'm not a scientist, I just say what I read from the book, and then probably she has an immune system which is more sensitive and more like rich in responding to different situations. I think this is probably a benefit or advantage of running a farm. You can have your family health enhanced or improve without knowing why.
And I just wanted to add something here, which keeps me going sometimes, is also I'm very privileged. I don't feel the need to do this from a compulsion of it, because most of the farming in India, many of the farmers, it's a hard life for them. It's part of their living, right? So, so some of the experiments that I do was, as I said, I fall flat on my face sometimes. I can afford to do them. So when I share that with somebody and it's a success story, this they don't have to go through that jumps. So I'm hoping that as I learn and as I share, the mistakes we collectively make go down as well. And so the person who really needs to use this, he can actually make lesser mistakes, and perhaps that way is more convinced that this is the way to move forward, because the support system is not there. So somewhere my farm also becomes a experimenting ground for myself to just take risks and do whatever I want to do, so that I can learn from it and then I share forward. So that also keeps me going. The fact that I can teach forward, or facilitate the information, and partly that's what keeps me away from the farm as well, where I leave the farm in the hands of folks who are working there, and I'm on the road doing courses and working with the urban young or the urban middle-aged folks, and perhaps then they then go forward and share forward. So that also keeps me going.
I just want to share one story that actually both of you said that, how because you do farming, how your family and close people who are actually around you get benefited from this thing, from the farming practices that you are doing. My story is little like different, because it's like coming from like I was doing my research to find more about endangered rice varieties in India, and I was in like back and beyond in a small town in Orissa, and meeting some farmers who are like really they're really like coming from a very very underprivileged background, but and they also grow this chemical fertilizer. They use all kinds of chemical fertilizer and all that for the rice they grow, but they also have small patches of land where they just grow rice and other things for themselves. So older people from the community, especially women, they were like making jokes and telling me that um, like we know that this is not good, but like we are compelled to. Some of them also do it because government have this kind of, they give free seeds, and some of these things are like free for them, and they don't have money to buy seed, so they save seed every year to grow for a small patch of land. They grow for themselves and their family. So like actually what makes us go and do this tedious kind of work with all these problems also, to like where where your food is coming from, that leaves you like gives you lot of peace, and like you feel the taste also becomes better just by thinking about it, like, you are growing it. Because we also feel it, like, when we see that one tomato is ripening for like 30 days, it is taking to ripe. And then we get a perfectly red tomato and we eat it, like we make maybe 5-8 pieces of it and all of us share, and then we feel that, oh, this is really tasty.
Sorry, I'm just going to try and bring things back a little bit to our focus today, which is also, I mean, one thing definitely is taste and flavor, and that is something as edible archives we pay a lot of attention to. In the restaurant also, we say we are ingredient driven because we want people to actually taste each ingredient. You are not tasting a dish, you're tasting one ingredient that is shining through the way it is cooked in this particular dish. And from there, we want to start the conversation about where does that ingredient come from, who is growing it, what does it take to grow it, etc. But then the other thing, apart from the flavor, is Madhu, what you said at one point is that, like, the reduction of processed foods and how much more reliance on millets, etc., in your specific diet. I think that it would be interesting for us to hear from both of you about how maybe, and I know I'm going off script a little bit, but how maybe what you thought you might be growing when you started, or what your impressions of organic farming, like a lot of people think, oh, we will grow tomatoes and we will grow berries and we will grow, I don't know, like exotic things. Maybe how that also changed, because it sounds like also, Chow, what you said, that you're growing so many different types of vegetables and you're not feeling the need necessarily to have other things apart from the food that you're growing. How that engagement with what you're growing and what you decide to grow, how that has changed as you have continued to farm. And especially, I would like you to think about that a little bit in terms of health as well. Like, is health, or your own health, your family's health, anybody else's health, one of the major factors in considering what you grow? Or is it always about flavor or other things like that?
I think health or nutrition in general, that sometimes health, we think that in a negative this thing, but overall nutrition.
So I think for me it was so what I did when I started was take a I mean, I come from a very business I was a consultant before, so I did a true audit, and I did a whole analysis of what the family ate, and I put myself also in that. And one of the anecdotes is that I started growing a lot of lettuce. I came from the salad eating background where I loved salads and all. So when I came to India, it's because of the climate here, we don't eat that many salads. So I remember growing loads and loads of different kinds of lettuces, and I brought home, and my mother basically started frying them. And I was like, no, this is not how you eat salads. She's like, then why don't you grow something that I can eat? That was also a light bulb moment where I was, so it was like, okay, let me look at as a family what, so the energy of growing lettuce for one person versus, what everybody eats. And a lot of it also went into perennial systems. I consciously worked more on the perennial systems. I said, what fruits can I put, what come on this land? So there was a kind of uh, a marriage between the two needs. The land can only produce so much. Me sitting in Deccan plateau of India can't grow apples, right? If maybe I can grow one apple tree somewhere, even if I created the microclimate for it. So it was a very conscious need to see what all can I grow here and how much can we grow that we can access directly from the land. So it was this whole idea of different kinds of fruits that came from the land. And then it was the cereals. So what was I eating? What were we eating at home? And what can I grow? So it was growing rice in that small window that we have. It was growing wheat, then it was growing millets as well. And that basically is what the dry land is known for. It's the millet lands, and how do I bring that back? And it was so strange because nobody in the village around me was growing that, even though it's such a big part of our nutrition. And so I was the first one after nearly, I don't know how many years. So people were kind of looking at it from that aspect. But then I realized that many people still eat them, even though they don't grow them, they get it from somewhere. So that's the analysis I did in terms of the family, how would you say, menu card and what do you eat at home. It wasn't per se from a specific health standpoint. It was more like, how can I bring in good nutrition? And by this time, I also knew the connection between good soil health, good gut biology, and what good food from my own farm will bring to the table. So it kind of started that way. It started with wanting to just have no pesticides and chemicals. I didn't think too much beyond that.
My idea is to just maximize the variety that we are able to grow, and also try to like intensify spatially and spatially, or like in terms of time management, as much as possible. Can I actually this afternoon, Kevin asked me if I can show some picture, and then I immediately took some. And let me show you what our farm looks like at the current moment. Oh, the host disabled attend this screen. Can I share my screen now? And the host allow me to do so.
Sorry, Bhumi, can you give permission to Chow? Are you there?
Seems not.
I'll do it. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So let me show you. Do you see the little photo? Not very. Like this. This is where we grow the snow peas. The snow pea is still very small, like here, the little plant here. But because the snow pea, in a matter of like 2 months, they are going to like create a tunnel of snow pea around the bamboo trees. But it takes 2 months, right? And then the space between each snow pea plant is like maybe 2 feet, or we have set them to be 1.5 feet or 2 feet. So there are lots of space between each snow pea plants, and then we just plant some lettuce and or crown daisy and then things like that between the space of snow pea. And after we harvested the lettuce and also the crown daisy, and then the snow pea will take over the whole space. And this is one of the things that we do. Oh, this is spinach. And then this is broccoli, and then we because broccoli is also a big plant that takes sometimes to grow, and then we will still sometimes during the vegetative growth stage of the broccoli, and then plant some lettuce in between. And this is choysum, and also some lettuce, and then things like that. And then this is carrots, and this is from a wider angle what our plants look like. We because I think my idea is that I think health, I think diversity is like a little bit cliche, but is still a very important and important notion that we have to explore. Uh, uh, I mean, if I can eat 70 types of 70 variety of vegetables every year, I'm pretty sure that I can get a little bit of what I need. And also because each types of plant, they have a different root system, like different depth. Some types of vegetables, they have a shallower root, and then some have a longer root, and then some are tall plants, some are short plants. If they can occupy the whole plot that we are working, I think that is the best for the soil as well, because soil doesn't. This is what I heard from some scientists. Soil doesn't need to rest because the microorganism inside the soil doesn't need to rest. But if we kill all the weed, and then we burn the land, and then things like that, we just damage the ecology and also the structure of the soil that takes time to rebuild. So we try to occupy the soil as much as possible so that we can be able to produce as large number of variety as possible. And then I think this is the way I see the relationship between the nutrition and also our production plan. I try to intensify and yeah, as much as possible. Yeah, this is the tomato plot. Okay.
So one more thing, this is slightly at tangent, but important to how we want to think about food in general. One thing is eating animals, but the other thing is, how do you feel about animal inputs in what you grow? Because in organic farming, generally the idea is to sort of create, I mean, there are various loops already, right? That animals eat plants, are eaten by other animals in turn, etc. So how do you close that loop by putting animal inputs of various kinds into your soil, into your food, into if at all? And if you do so, how important is it where the animal is coming? Like the input from the animal where is it coming from? Like, does it have to be from the same space, or does it matter at all? Like, these are some of the questions also that we'd like to hear from you.
Animal integration is a key, in my opinion. In a sense, it depends on what scale you do, but so I personally don't have animals on the land, but I do integrate their products. So I have a barter system with a neighbor of mine who has a cattle. He's got cows, a couple of cows and buffaloes. So what I do is I give him grazing rights on my farm. So that way there is a natural management of the land with the help of animals. And it's proven time and again that hoofed animals, with their footprints and the way they eat, they actually are helpful in the succession of a ecosystem. So that part, I try and bring in the animals. They graze on the land, and of course, as they are grazing, their poop and their urine is falling on the land. The other is bringing from the local villages who have animals dung and putting it in different forms. So we compost for certain zones, and then we actually also do in situ composting for some of the bigger trees. And the dung that we bring in mostly is from free grazing animals. So these are animals which are not bound anywhere. So a lot of sheep and goat still in our area are grazed, they're taken into the hills or they're grazed in and around the villages, and that dung comes back to the farm in the natural farm. And then I do a lot of green manuring trees around, which we chop and drop with this dung. There are poultry farms around, and in the last 8 years I have not had the courage of bringing chicken manure from the poultry farms, because I know that they put hormones and steroids, they inject into these hens and the chicks and stuff. Part of me scientifically knows that over the time, anything that is artificial will have a half life, but I still haven't been able to muster to bring in the chicken manure. So far still am sticking to the animal dung, which is free graze, free range, if you want to call it, and working with the farmers. But by and large, being in a very peri-urban area, I feel that the animal inputs in my future time will go down. So if I'm putting 10 tons a year, every year, I think it'll reduce, because the ability of people to keep animals is going down because they are expensive. There's a lot of issues around. There are a lot of laws now around keeping them and what they can do with it. So slowly in the last 8 years, there was a time when we were able to till the land with bullocks. This year, I could not find a pair of bullocks in the 3 villages around me. So the use of animals also is going down. So as that goes down, we'll have to work more with the natural biological ones. So far, I haven't come to that point, but I have a feeling next 5 years I'll see that change as well. Yeah.
I think the animal integration is really an issue in Hong Kong, because after I think the bird flu, early 2000, 2003 or 2004, the ordinary people are not allowed to raise chicken in their house, not even one. If they like a commercial chicken farm, they need to apply for license, and they have to invest a lot of money in the sewage and also the hygiene things. So we are not able to raise chickens and pigs in our farm, and that's why we don't really have much animal input in our farm. We did some our because our partner, because we have a group of people working in the farm, not only me. Some of our partners, they did try to bring bees, honey bees, into the farm. But sadly, I think probably because our lack of experience, our box of bee was attacked by another types of very stronger bee, and then the whole family, they just flew away, and then we are left with the empty box, and that's pretty sad. But I mean, in terms of animal integration, I do want to mention that in Hong Kong, I think the farms in general are pretty vulnerable to some animals. Say, for example, recently we have heard from our friends that farms in different areas, they were trespassed by wild boars and also abandoned buffalo or cows. And then after their visit, the farm will suffer very severe damage. And actually, the fun thing is that in this year, the government they have a new policy of hunting wild boar. but not in the rural area where all those farms lie, but they hunt wild boar in the urban area. Just to I mean, maybe they're trying to protect citizens from the urban area, but this policy did stir up a lot of controversy and like debates from different sides. But I think after the whole controversy and discussion, the farmers in the rural area are pretty speechless, because they are talking about wild boar in the urban area, but we still have to face the trespass of the wild boar every day in our farm.
Yeah, I just wondered if Chao could speak about the practices in mainland China, because I know you've traveled to the farms there as well. Is there a difference, and do they have much more of animal integration?
Insofar as the commercial farm that I visited, they are pretty like factory-like. They apply conventional chemical synthetic fertilizers and also pesticide. But if you're talking about the people, the folks in the village, if you're talking about the area that they manage for themselves, like and Anu Mitra said, they reserve some space for their own consumption, and that would be the heaven. That would be the utopia, because you see, like just as Madu said, you have people who have fruit trees. Say, for example, they will have a little fruit orchard, and then they have chickens and ducks running around the canopy of the trees, just to search for like bugs and what they are able to eat. And then they, of course, they will reward the tree with their manure. And then also they will raise chicken and pigs, and then they will convert all those left behind into the input of the farm. They create like perfect system where animal and plants, they serve each other, and I think this is still pretty normal in a village where people keep a little piece of land for themselves. And I really jealous of them. They can yes, have such a partnership between animals and plants.
Okay. I think my last question then actually is the following on from things both of you said, is that like we've been, both of you have touched upon soil health and how important that is to growing things, but also so in both Ayurveda and TCM there are metaphors sometimes of the human body also as a garden or a farm, if you want to think of it that way, like a garden or a landscape where there's an army of gardeners all working together to keep it healthy, as opposed to like say a war kind of a metaphor where there's a virus that is invading and there's an army of cells saving the body from attack. This is different, that there's an army instead of gardeners who are all tending different parts of the garden or the farm and keeping it in harmony with each other. And that is what keeps it healthy. So in that way, like if we think about that and we talk about soil health, do you also feel that organic farming and its emphasis on soil health also has an effect on like bodily health, gut health? Ayurveda and TCM both talk about digestion as being the most important key to health also. And both of you also talked about this, that soil health leads to good gut health. Do you have anything to say about how your farming might lead to just like better digestion, better choices in terms of like healthy food in that way?
I just wanted to add to that, pulling out of something out of our previous discussions, So when we talk about soil health and food health, the health of the body, could we also talk about what's involved in that? So like what do you eat, what do you grow? I think to take it back also to the earlier discussions about what you grow and what you eat, how are these connected to the question that Shalini has just asked? But I remember when I used to take the vegetables from Chow's farm, they were seasonal. So to come back to the question of the seasons, and he would say, in the season, we are going to send you this. And I'm saying, oh, but where will I get my carrots? And I said, in this season, you will eat this. I said, okay. So it's a discipline that the consumer learns as well. And then he would also send recipes saying you can make this with this vegetable. So I wondered if you could speak to that question of the seasons as well at the end.
I remember, okay, so I'll start with an anecdote. I remember my grandmother coming and visiting us when we were living in Delhi. And I was offering her apples and she was like, she wasn't that interested. And I told her, no, this is good for you, this, that. And she's like, nah, if I was supposed to eat this, this would grow in my backyard, she would tell me. So she comes from a land where there were guavas in winter, which gave her all the vitamin C. So somewhere when we were bringing back, so I was bringing back food, fruits or veggies from the farm, as you said, it had to be in that season. And it was so much more harder for me to grow carrots, say, in summer. And it would be pest ridden. And if you don't grow cabbages and carrots in a short window, they would never grow. So educating people at home, it began with that, you don't really eat winter vegetables in summer just because it's coming, it's trucked. So that conversation was happening. And also consciously, I personally don't eat out of the season. But then the conversation would be, how do you know what's in the season? Because in the supermarkets, everything's there. And as consumers, people start messaging me in February itself, Madhu, when are mangoes going to come? When are this going to come? And you kind of go, the mango tree hasn't even fruited yet. But the perception of the people is certain parts of India, you push hormones, you get the mangoes. So people, in March, April, people are getting. So having folks wait for it and educate them and say, guys, patience will pay off. You will get a good fruit. Please wait till June. That's when my mangoes come. So that was one part of education that is in the family and with consumers. Keep educating them slowly about localization, eat local. Don't try and eat 100-kilometer radius, 50-kilometer radius. Everything that's traveling also has less food miles. So from an ecological footprint as well. I think I don't know the science behind the gut biology and the soil biology, but I do remember conversations people were having around how our gut is so localized. So if you were traveling, that's one more reason why we always have trouble adjusting, because the bacteria that's there around us and inside us is adjusting. So somewhere I see the connection that perhaps it's I don't know how to say this. Again, it's a localized biology which is occurring in us, and that takes time as well as we are eating. And I remember that one of the things we started doing a little bit more as you were eating better is a little bit more fermented foods, which brought in the biology, the gut biology, and helped the gut biology. And yeah, that's what comes to my mind.
I have a lot of fragments to respond. Say, for example, I know just a very, very, very little about Chinese medicine. And according to Chinese medicine, different types of foods have different characteristics or their essential features. for vegetables, foods can be like characterized into like very hot, a little hot, and neutral or medium, and then a little bit chill or very cold, and then I think the interesting thing is that for omnivores, for people who eat both meats and vegetables, normally the meat plays the part of like providing the heat. That's why if we eat more vegetables, the chilling effects will neutralize the heat provided by the meat. But the interesting thing is that I think in the recent decades, I don't know, 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, people become very aware of having vegetables whose characteristics is cold or chill. And then they will avoid having those type of vegetables, saying that, wow, I'm very weak, my body is very weak, I can't take this, it makes me like fall down, etc., etc. And I think this makes me pretty puzzled regarding what we are growing, what we are going to grow. And then say for example, in the summer, like every types of vegetable that we are able to grow belongs to the like cold family. The water spinach, the bitter melon, the winter melon, things like that. They are all pretty cold in terms of Chinese medicine. And then but you know, it is a very satisfying thing if we can be able to grow winter melon whose weight is say for example 20 kilogram. It will be very satisfying. But then people will it's like I'm holding a big piece of snow in my hand, and then they feel cold just by seeing the winter melon. And so what can we do? The problem is, I think, has a lot to do with their lifestyle. They stay in air-conditioned room, like 24 hours a day, doing no exercise at all and things like that. But then they are very aware of what they eat, vegetables. So what vegetables they're going to eat. And then I think this is one phenomenon that we experience. And the second thing about the guts and also the vegetables is that because I in the past few years I also take up the hobby of like long distance running, and then in my training I get to know things that if our body or our muscle has to like grow stronger, we have to give them different level of stimulation. Different types of stimulation will lead to different types of muscle development. I think this is the same with our guts and also the soil and also with our taste as well. If we go to the market or if we go to the wet market or the supermarket, we get the most very young plant. We don't eat fibrous vegetables. When people see a piece of spinach that is like 1 feet tall, they say, wow, they won't say that, wow, how can you grow this big? Are you very skillful? They won't say that. They will say that, oh, this piece of vegetable is very old. And then when people, of course, I'm not defending some practices of the farmers or organic farmers in particular, but I mean, if our guts only receive those type of the type of vegetable that is very young, like 99% of water, no fiber, and things like that, we are not getting enough stimulation in our stomach. When people say that they peel the skin of carrots, sweet potato, lotus, and things like that, I can understand their rationale from the standpoint of food security, but it gets into a routine that even when they are handling organic vegetables from trusted source, they're still doing it. And then by doing this, I think they sacrifice the very important opportunity to let their guts to handle different materials. And then by not having that ability to handle different types of material, I don't know, because I'm not a Chinese medicine, but I think some of the people they will have what the Chinese medical terms called 硬胃咁樣，硬胃又點樣講？ It gets very difficult to digest something. They sometimes have difficulty in digesting some types of material. I think there are very complicated reasons between all types of things in their eating habits, in what we are provided in the markets and things like that. And if we really take the seasons seriously, the last point I'd like to mention is that as comparing with autumn and winter, the variety that we can grow in summer is relatively less. And then, but because, as I said, I feed on my own farm, I have to stand the summer time where we don't have a lot of variety. So my solution is to work with the same type of vegetables, no matter they are in what stage. In a very young stage, in mid-age, and also in their old age. Say, for example, we have Teju has also tried this before, I'm sure. The water spinach. Normally, if we sell to our customer, we also prefer the young part, which is at the tips of the whole plant. But when we are not getting enough variety, we have to experiment with the old part, and then and in that way, I have to think about the way to cook it so that I can at least chew, put it in my mouth, and my teeth can handle them, and then also my stomach can handle them. So I chop it into very like dice, like little dice, and then fry it along with my fried rice. And in that case, my stomach, I'm pretty sure my stomach will have to work pretty hard to accommodate that type of material inside my body. But then I'm fine. I managed to ingest those fibrous part of the plant and without getting very uncomfortable. But I mean, this is a little bit crazy. I must say that normal people don't usually experience these things. But I mean, like different stimulation lead to different ability. This example is trying to say is that in time when the variety was pretty restricted, it can on the other hand become an opportunity to explore something else, and I find that interesting.
Yeah, there's a word in permaculture which we call catch and store energy, which is something that our I think forefathers did very well. So in the summer, if there were only very few vegetables that came, they would store some of the foods that were dried from that same vegetable. So something that I remember from our family uses, when we get bananas, the vegetable bananas, we just get huge bunch, right? So how do you excite the family to eat something that's coming, but it is the same banana? So how do you make different things with it? So that's some experimentation we do at home, in trying to bring in recipes from different parts where we can keep our, it can't be the same way you eat it. And something else that triggered my remembrances, in our cuisine, we use so if we are growing sesame in one season, after harvest it's used in the next season. So remembering that, that's how we use oils at home. Even though I don't produce my own oil, I try and make sure I'm getting cold press oils which are specific for that season. So you use safflower in one season, you use peanut oil in one season, and you use the sesame in one season. So remembering that seasonality, and also how you prepare food. For example, there's one millet that's only eaten in the winters in our area. It's not eaten in the summers. So December, January, Feb, and then after that. So, and it also doesn't stay long because of the rancidity and all in the millet. So somehow remembering that as well then helps you to kind of say, okay, my cuisine, I'll finish my pearl millet this season because it's not going to stay too long. So that's something that I remembered that we do at home as well, in terms of how we use certain millets which have this hot and cold, something that Chow was talking about. We have it in some of the foods as well, and how you eat it and what you eat it with. So if it's hot, then you eat it with, say, buttermilk or things like that. So yeah.
Thank you. I think looking at the time, we have to wind up, but this is sounding like a very fascinating discussion that I hope we can continue to take forward in some other way at some point. And thank you again for being part of this conversation with all of us.
I have one thing to say, just very short thing, which is that from the whole discussion, like there are 2-3 points which came. I think we should just summarize with that. One is that like when we discuss food, health, organic farming and all these things, it's also coming like we are really discussing this, that we have to like we have to also educate people around things like seasonality, or the things that Chow said in terms of the vegetable part, that overgrown vegetable, or Madhu said about millet, that these are the things which are not always very easy to digest, because we are going towards more processed food, and it's not like, so we consider they are not easy to digest, but actually it's not so much like that. I think the education, like educating consumer is as important as like doing this seasonality and all these things, practicing it. Yeah, I think we are in end of the discussion. Okay, bye. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.